Hello, Slicey Dicers. This is Brian with another knife review for you. Today we have the Hoback Sumo. This is one you guys have been requesting a whole lot. Very happy to finally bring you one. Thank you very much to one of my lovely viewers for loaning this to me. I do very much appreciate it. It's not an unboxing. I have had it for a couple weeks. I've been carrying it and using it and getting a good feel for it. But I wanted to show you the box, so I put it back in the box for this video because it's a pretty snazzy box, you got to admit. I like all this wood. My camera does not like it. We'll get the box out of the way in a minute, and it'll stop trying to color correct for brown on purple. My camera just does not like that combo. But a really nice wood-burned box. I think it's really cool. And, you know, some people say, oh, who cares about the packaging? You just put it on a shelf, throw it away, and who cares? When you're spending this much, this is a $550 knife. Some nice packaging is much appreciated. So let's open the sucker up and get to it. So, yeah, pull that thing off. You get the tools, which I think is a very good sign when you see tools in a knife, because that means I have permission to take this thing apart if I want to. I did not do it because this thing is running perfectly and I don't need to. But if I see tools, I feel like, okay, cool. It's fine to take it apart. Very cool little Sumo patch. I think that's awesome. He has little individual patches for his individual knives. I think that's pretty cool. This is my first experience with Jake Hoback, and I have to say the unboxing experience was extremely pleasurable. The little card with all the different stats, which are accurate, I will say. I'm going to be reading the stats off this card in just a moment because they're accurate, except for I took, like, you know, behind the edge and stuff myself because that's not on here. But other than that, yeah, they do a very, very good job, I do have to say. And it's got his little commitment to quality thing on the back here. It does have the Psalm 23 on it. Jake Hoback's a very religious fella, which is completely fine. We're going to touch on that just a little bit when we look at the knife. But yeah, let's put that stuff aside. I'm going to put the stats up so I can read them to you again later if you didn't pause and read. If you paused to read, then you can skip when I talk about that. But let's get the actual knife out. It's in this cool foam. Put all this stuff aside. And let's get to the knife. So I really like the look of this. I have had a couple people when I mentioned I was reviewing one saying they didn't like the look of it. It is a bit, futury, I guess, which I don't know, I had maybe wrong or right. I kind of had a thing in my head about Hoback being a more kind of traditionally oriented company. But yeah, this is definitely a bit more, modern and futury looking than a lot of his stuff is. But I honestly really like it. It has this triangular sort of thumb stud on it. I really like the color combo. Obviously, it's like a black DLC with some purple ano. I think it looks pretty cool. I like this little honeycomb thing on one side of the pivot. I really like the look of the pocket clip. I like the look of the pocket clip. We'll get more about that. That's probably the most controversial feature of this knife. But the action is undeniably super smooth, which we'll talk about ad nauseum. And I don't know, I just really like the look of it. I think it looks pretty good. Fairly sterile blade. So just the Hoback logo, that's fine. One thing, it has the Psalm 23 thing on the flipper tab. I'm not in love with that. I would rather it not be there. And in my opinion, it's upside down, isn't it? Like, shouldn't it be the other way? Like, no matter how you flip it, like, I would think it should be that way. But whatever, we're going to leave that at that. So, like I said, $550, M390 steel, button lock is as smooth as can be. I can't wait to talk about that. So let's get stats and size comparisons out of the way before we get there. You have a blade length of 3 1/4 inches, overall length of 7.3 inches, we're going to call it. You have a blade thickness of just a little less than 0.16 inches. And a weight of 4.6 ounces. So it's not particularly light, but for being a whole lot of titanium and steel, not too bad. Bring out the usual spider codes. You have your paramilitary 2 and your para 3. So you can see it's pretty compact for the size blade that it is. The packaging to get that much blade in is excellent. Very well done there. Bring out the Benchmades. We have your Benchmade 940 and the full-size Bug Out, which has a very similarly length blade. But again, this is significantly shorter. Obviously a much, taller, thicker knife, but still, it's a little bit shorter. And my bug out is filthy. What did I do with that the last time I carried it? There's all kinds of weird stuff stuck to it. Clean your knives before you do video, Brian. But if I do that, then people say I don't use my knives, so whatever. So let's talk about this blade. Fairly thick blade stock for sure, but a little less than 15 thousandths behind the edge. So it slices really well. Seemed pretty well sharpened out of the box. Not the best sharpening job I've ever seen, but pretty darn good for sure. No issues there. It does have it's going to look thinner because of the swedge here, but it's got a fairly decent tip on it. It's not like the sturdiest thing in the world, but not too bad. It is all belly, so some people do like that. I prefer to have a little bit of flat, but I find it to slice extremely well. And it's 20 CV. It's a good blade steel. It's completely fine and no issues there. As far as the ergonomics go, so this is where we talk about the clip. I find if you hold it the way that it feels like you should, that pocket clip is fine. It does land right, in my palm crotch, as I always say. It's fine. I can feel it, but it's not bad. But if you adjust your grip in any way, it's pretty uncomfortable. And that is the number one complaint about this knife, is the pocket clip, because the location is kind of up high instead of being centered. And that's the biggest complaint you hear about this knife around, is I love it, but I don't like the pocket clip. But again, for my hands, if I hold it the way I think that Jake Hoback intended, it's okay. It's not great, it's okay. Would that stop me from buying the knife? I don't know if that one factor would, but just depends on your hands. It's and you don't know it until you get it in your hands. So yeah, I would have preferred a more just kind of conventional clip and conventional clip placement, I guess. But there's that. How does it carry? Not too bad. Like I said, it's 4.6 ounces. It ain't light. It's a fairly tall knife. It does take up a decent amount of room. I will say that pocket clip works pretty well. It does kind of angle the knife over a bit, and there's not much. It's not bad. It's not amazing for a 3 1/4 inch knife, but it's not bad at all. The only real complaint I have is, and I don't mind the purple sticking out, because by the way, this comes in a bunch of different color configurations. So if you don't want a bit of purple sticking out of your pocket, don't worry about it. But this jimping on the top here does hit your hand pretty good when it goes by. It's not super sharp or anything, but definitely if you're going to be reaching past this multiple times a day, that might get a bit annoying. So. But now let's talk about, I think, the most important part of this knife, the action. This is probably the most fidgety knife I've ever reviewed. It's super smooth, and you can open it a bazillion ways. You have the thumb triangle. You can just flick it open with the button lock. It's got a flipper tab that actually, despite its very, very, very tiny size, does work well. And this little indent in the blade, you can use it to spidey flick it. Thumb flick's a bit more awkward, but you can still do it. But you can open it a bazillion different ways, and it is so smooth. Just ridiculously smooth. This is probably the most fidgety knife I have ever reviewed, for sure. Maybe that's worth the $550 to you alone. I think to some people it probably will be. It does. The action feels like $550. Because the detent, it's really hard to get the detent right for all those different opening methods, and Hoback definitely did. It works equally well in all those different opening methods, and that is kind of insane that he managed to pull that off. Now, the price. It is $550. There is some, I don't know why, but some places on the interwebs have some ambiguity about it. They don't like, well, Hoback doesn't say exactly where they're made. I don't know. Have you read the site on the frequently asked questions? It pretty clearly explains that parts for these are made kind of all over the world. So he gets some titanium from Russia. He gets some of the parts from China, and they are all assembled and tuned in America. It says that pretty clearly when you go to the frequently asked questions thing on the site, so I don't really understand the confusion about that. And it probably varies knife to knife where he gets what parts from. So as long as you're fine with that, then, you're fine with that. So $550 though, I don't know. That's a lot. It definitely feels like something Riot would have made for somebody for 400. And I guess, yeah, you want to keep some part of your manufacturing in the USA, and I understand that, and that's probably what Jake's reasoning is for it, to do all the assembly in America, and therefore in the tuning and having to charge more for it. But at my point, I guess at some point I'm thinking, if you're getting the parts from overseas and, Riot or somebody could do it for less, why not just do that? Yeah, maybe it's just me. Jake's probably a much more patriotic person than me or something, I guess. But I don't think it's horridly overpriced. I just think that, yeah, I guess at this point, I'm not a knife company owner. I would just have it made overseas and charge less for it. But it is an outstandingly well put together knife. I have no issues at all with the quality, and the action is just stupid. It's so good. And I can't imagine it was cheap, to figure all that out. And maybe that's why he wants to build them in the U.S. and tune them himself, because it is hard to tune it properly, and I understand that. But, yeah, so I would say definitely not without its flaws, but, man, definitely the most fidgety, fun knife I've reviewed in a very long time. It was one that I definitely just sat here playing with at my desk for significant amounts of time. A really cool knife, but, yeah, maybe not so in love with the price. I hope you guys have enjoyed this. I've been Brian. Have a good one.